From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. Do you like that theme song? Hopefully you're not in love with it, because I'm going to suggest we change it. And we have a Theraproducer in here today who will be able to give his input. And now, broadcasting from the Churn.
The Churn!
That guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Yeah, that was absolutely heartbreaking. Somebody on Facebook tagged us and said, hey, this is your theme song. And it's in like an arts and crafts video, like for something on Facebook with like crayons and glue or some crap like that. And we're just like, watch, it's like, what is this? But it's an open source song. So it's actually from a guy named Ben Sounds, or that's his website. And originally when we found the song, he has him up there and he says, hey, you can use the song for anything as long as you give me credit. And I definitely did that for like the first 5 episodes, and then I stopped. So.
Oh, we did? Oh, yeah. Well, we should get rid of it anyway.
No,
I
it's iconic. You can't vote for that.
No, I think we're coming up on a year.
Yeah.
I think...
dude, no. It's part of the brand.
Well,
it's the thing. I love that song.
I've already started working on it.
Oh, Jesus. We're going to do original compositions now?
Yes.
Is that
yes.
it?
We're going to do something original.
You know what? I'll actually take your dare. Yeah.
So
whatever you produce, that's the theme song.
Okay.
And we can't get rid of it, ever. I don't think you would live with yourself.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Or it
Fair
becomes
enough.
your ringtone. I think that should be the way it is.
Either way.
Since you suck so much at that.
So on today's show, we have Smitty Scoop.
Smitty Scoop! Also known as Theraproducer Smitty THERAPAL.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
he goes by many names. They have many names. He's here for Scoop Fest in fabulous Las Vegas. Say hi, Smit.
Hello, everybody.
We're excited to have you. If you recognize his voice, that's because as a Theraproducer, he gets to actually provide content, whether in writing or recorded, for our little commercial breaks. And he recorded a hilarious bit where you talked about how you had your daughter listen to our episode on opioids.
I did, because I feel like kids don't listen to their parents anyway.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's 100% true.
And you did a great discussion of how addictive opioids are and how bad it is. And
you wanted to make sure they knew.
And I figured at 11, she's at the perfect age. I can put that information in her head.
Yeah, kind of get ahead of it.
And then when I ask her to pop a pill, she'll go, no, I'll just smoke the joint.
That's
and
right.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Good girl. That's a good girl. I remember what those therapy guys said, yes, honey.
Yeah.
That's why I sponsor the show right there. Don't do drugs.
I never really thought of our target audience
as 11-year-old girls.
11-year-old girls.
I've always known that.
Now I'm kind of reconsidering a lot of the stuff.
A lot of the content.
I think
so many of our episodes.
I'm not going to be able to get that out of my head now.
I think that the parents can decide which bits they will let their kids listen to. But Smitty, which part of the country are you from?
I am from Northern Virginia, Annandale, right outside Washington, D.C.
Is it cold there yet?
No, it's actually been pretty warm.
It's pretty, yeah.
We had about 2 months of nonstop rain, though.
So wow. I've heard of that. Rain? Is that how you pronounce it?
Rain,
okay,
yes.
yeah. I've only seen it in writing. I've never really,
I've seen pictures.
I've seen pictures of it. We get like 1 day of rain a year here in Las Vegas, and it's still like 80 degrees outside right now. And I think week before, it was like in the 90s. Yeah. So anytime it gets but it's really funny. There's all these memes online. Have you seen these? Where it's like pictures of like White Walkers, like people frozen, like from The Shining and stuff. And it's like Las Vegans now that it's under 80 degrees. That's completely true. Yeah. Everybody I know is just like sweaters, jackets, like except for Jacob. He doesn't care. No. He's from Louisiana. You didn't notice. What is it? Never under like, what is it? 80, 70, 80 there? Always?
Oh, in Louisiana?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's during the summer, it's hot and wet.
Oh, it's always wet.
And during the winter, it's really cold and wet.
It's always wet. I almost tagged you the other day on Twitter.
Horrible.
There was this great, like, random thing that showed up on Twitter, and it's, like, a 40-foot crocodile pulled out of the bayou, and I'm like, yeah, of course, that's where they live. Like, that's where they're made. That's not news.
If you go on a bayou, you're gonna find a crocodile.
That's
an alligator.
What the hell else do they have? Oh, is that what it is? It's alligators out there?
Yeah.
And then crocodiles are, like, what, in the Gulf or something?
No, I think there's saltwater crocodiles.
Okay.
You go to Egypt, you can find
that's
Nile crocodiles. Yeah.
Nile crocodiles. That's fair. That's fair. Well, man, we're really excited to have you. So all the way in from Virginia, you're excited to be in Las Vegas for Scoop Fest.
I am. Scoop Fest is a blast.
Dude, this is my first one. So I'm pretty excited to get my Scoop Fest cherry popped. So all the way in from Virginia, here for Scoop Fest, and you've been to more than this one?
I've been to both official Scoop Fests.
Oh my gosh. Dang, that needs to have like a prize to it, or you should get like a special license plate in your state.
Well, there are some folks that went on a Scoop cruise. I'm not in that elite company.
Oh,
Right,
wow. That punched their ticket to the cruise. I think you told me about this.
I did.
Well, that's really cool. It's funny because when we started Pod Therapy, which was January of this year, here we are, we're doing our thing. We're thinking, okay, this will be a great way to encourage people to have a conversation about mental health and, just destigmatize it, make it an honest conversation. And then Nick is a huge fan of that show, Ice Cream Social. And so we write in with the Jock versus Nerd once, just on a whim, like, oh, this will be fun. We'll make it a mental health episode. You guys ran it. It was a lot of fun, and then we ended up on the show, and now, half of our listeners are Scoops. So it's really funny because you're Smitty Scoop, and then when you read in our show, you're like, I guess I'm Smitty THERAPAL on this one. It's so funny because half the questions are from people that go by Scoop.
Right, and I have to ask, Smitty, so we're here, I guess we can announce this, we are now recording at the Churn.
At the Churn.
So we have some new landlords.
Yep.
And for you, as a big fan of Ice Cream Social, you're here at the Churn listening to us. Is this kind of like for you, like attending a minor league baseball game?
in a big stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the stadium's really nice.
Yeah.
There's one hot dog guy. He's just walking back. He doesn't even have to yell. He's like, hey, can I get you out? No, okay, I'll be back. I'll just be right over here.
So we do want to thank you for being a Theraproducer.
Yes.
Participating.
One of the Elite Eight.
Yeah, so there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with your donation. We definitely appreciate that. You now have input into the production of this show.
That's right.
So I just want to ask, what is your vision for
where do you see us
therapy
going with
moving
Pod
forward?
Therapy? Now, you're a producer. You're the boss. So, we're excited to meet with you. And, what would you have us do?
Well, I figure there's a large untapped market.
In 11-year-olds?
Well, 11-year-olds aside. Of people that need therapy.
Yeah.
But are too cheap to either go to a therapist.
Right.
Or too lazy or frustrated from trying to find a therapist that's a good mix.
Right.
If they could just do it like a podcast an hour a week, they could
there you go.
Be healed, right? Get the
there
therapy they need.
Just write in every week. Hey, it's me again. So anyway, here's what's going on at home.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's a great idea. It's funny because one of the first things we had to deal with when we started the show was we're actually licensed clinicians. So there's a very tight rope that we have to walk of like, okay, what can we do and how much interaction can we have with the writer before we've crossed the line and it's medical? And we have to very careful. So we're able to do the questions and stuff, but it's funny because we've actually at one point had this idea, what about bringing somebody on the show and going very deep with that person, like really almost doing a live session? There is a history of that in psychology. Like Freud did it, like all these people did it. They did showcases. But those guys are way cooler than us, and we definitely think we'd lose our licenses.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
We've had to tiptoe around that. So this is good notes, though.
Right.
Yeah, the people that are too cheap for the therapist.
So how does this work? When people send you an email, if it's the same email address that keeps sending you the letters, but they put a different name, do you play along with it, pretend it's someone different?
I've never thought of
I've
that.
never had the same one twice. But they could be because, well, actually, except for Manu. Manu writes us every week with feedback. But it's never like, hey, here's a new question. It's like, okay, so Jim, here's where you screwed up. She factors big into my apologies. Every week I have to do my apologies and here are the things Manu pointed out. Actually, it's going to come up because people had a lot of notes on my Marine Le Pen thing about France. Apparently I was wrong again. So this keeps happening. But I don't think we've had the same email twice. But anonymous things.
That is somebody could just write in anonymously and
we wouldn't know.
Just, hey, as a piggyback from that last email that you guys read in the last episode.
I mean, hypothetically, here's a follow-up. Right. So let's say that his wife, you did what he told him to do. And this is what his wife said. I mean, what would you do to that? Wait a minute. This is starting to become a thread.
So moving forward with pod therapy, if it got to a point, I mean, the success of the show, if it depended on having to replace one of the two of us, which do you think you would replace?
One or both. Can we get rid of both? That's our whole goal, is to work ourselves out of a job. Recruit other people to do this. We can just sit back and...
You could franchise it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We should have a Pod Therapy Atlanta. Pod Therapy NCIS. This is the thing. I think that we can do this. Or topic therapy, right? Just one for alcoholism, just one for... But that would ruin our game, so probably not. So I was interrupting Smitty because I know he's going to say me. I think we should get rid of you, Nick. You're the one that wants to get rid of the damn theme song. Can't have you. You're trying to reframe everything. But you just became the treasurer of Pod Therapy, so you're technically in control now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have...
You're a master of our Patreon, so...
Yeah.
Do we know if Froyo Saucer, a.k.a. Justin Nozick, is a listener?
Froyo, yeah.
I think we should throw it out to him to get you a theme song. He's done several already.
He has done a few.
All right, there it is, Froyo. Let's hear it. I really like our theme song. It's a treasure.
I did too until I saw it on Facebook.
Anybody else is using it.
Yeah.
So we have to only have theme songs that we have copyright on?
Well, something original, something that's kind of catchy that you're not going to...
100% of our listeners. I apologize, listeners, in advance.
I know that's why people listen in, is the theme song.
It's the only reason I like it. I stopped listening right at the end of that thing.
All right, so moving on, I suppose we should get into some listener mail.
Got some listener mail.
Stick around. I would love to hear your input, Smitty. If you
absolutely.
Have any. Yeah, I just realized I don't know your real name.
It's
Patrick.
No.
Okay. I didn't want to know.
You wanted to guess?
I just wanted to keep the mystery. I just wanted to keep it as Smitty
That's the
Scoop.
fun. That's the fun. I have no idea who that
Patrick.
guy is.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
I'm going to stick with Smitty. All right, so the first letter we have, Nick, is titled, How Can I Make My Wife Happy? All right, here it is. Hello, Jim. Hello, Nick. I love your podcast, and it's one of the few things I wait for. You guys answer many of my questions through the podcast, and I'm sure it's helping many others. Me and my wife, we came to the U.S. on student visas from the same country. We were high school friends. We got married right after we are done with our school at 25 and 24. After our studies, we worked on a student work permit for 3 years. Later, we applied for regular work visas, which is a lottery. Mine got picked, and hers did not. Ever since, she is at home for about 20 months now. She is getting very depressed and at times becomes very angry at me for simple things. She cannot go back to work until I get my green card, which might not happen for years. We were a happy couple for a long time. Right after school, she got an abortion because we were not married at that time, and we thought that was the right decision so we could focus on our careers. But she thinks about it now and feels bad. Now I feel that it was a bad decision too, and it makes me sad as well. It's been about 5 years now. Now she says she wants to have kids, but we wouldn't have sex more often, probably once in a couple of months, and she insists on using protection. I've tried many things to keep her occupied and entertained, but everything seems to fail. All I want is for her to be happy. I tried to take her to therapy, but she refuses sternly. Is there anything I can do to make her happy? I love her so much. I like my job and the life here. Should I go back to my country so she can work? I'm losing her, and so is she. It would really help to get some advice from you guys. Thank you, Bargov.
Okay, well, thank you for writing in. That's a good question.
That is a good question.
The first thing that that kind of popped into my head was that I always get a little nervous when I hear people saying, what can I do to make someone else happy?
Okay.
And I would encourage you to kind of change the way you think about that and think of that more as, how can I be available for her happiness?
Okay.
As opposed to saying, how can I make her happy? Because I think when you say, how can I make somebody else happy, that puts a lot on you, and it puts literally nothing on them.
That's fair.
I think the best thing that you can do is just be available. So, being supportive. So whatever changes she starts to make, working towards her happiness, you can be there, you can be responsive to it, you can encourage it. I kind of like using the example of like if you've ever lit a campfire.
Okay.
You've got the little spark. You have no control over that spark. You have to be available to kind of fan the flames.
Okay.
Okay. So it's her responsibility, in a sense, to try to find that first spark of happiness. You can
create a setting that happiness can flourish in, but only they can sort of light that fire. But it is interesting, right? Because this is a unique dynamic. They are two people who came to the States, tried to start their career, applied for visas. He got in, she did not. And so it sounds like a really interesting long-distance relationship. And we're not talking long-distance like, hey, they live in the next town over. She lives in another country.
I thought they were living together, but she just can't work.
He said she's home for 20 months or something like that. Maybe she isn't allowed to work here, but
maybe I misunderstood that.
But he says, should I go home, so that she can work? So I kind of feel like there's some kind of dynamic where she's not, located with him for extended periods of time. So at the end of the letter, he says, and I quote, tried to make her happy, love her, love my job. Should I go back to my country so she can work? So I think that there's a dynamic there where her visa ran out and she couldn't get the extension because it's temporary.
Yeah, see, I was reading it that they were here together, but she can't work. because of the circumstances with citizenship.
Which is an interesting dynamic too. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Is we should both go home so that way she can work instead of being stuck. Okay.
And I think, to that point, if that is the case, I can empathize with that. And I think maybe that's a good place to start, too, for our listener, is empathizing with that situation of not being able to work. Because work provides a lot of things for us. I personally, I think that happiness, to a large degree, is dependent on our ability to overcome challenges.
Yeah.
So if you think of this like a video game. So I know Jim's a video game player.
I am.
Play video games.
I dabble.
If you're playing a video game that provides no challenge for you,
right,
you don't get a whole lot of fulfillment. It's not very enjoyable, and you don't really play it very long.
Okay.
Right? You can go completely the opposite direction. You get a video game that is almost impossible.
Okay, yeah.
And then you're like, forget this, I can't play it. It's that right mix of it challenges me, and it provides some kind of outcome,
so you're
some
saying work
kind of
is similar to that.
Work does that.
Is it challenging and fulfilling?
Right, and those are the best jobs. When you have a job that challenges you on a regular basis, but then also fulfills you, that leads to a lot of happiness.
I think that's
but
fair.
Here's the other thing too: is that it doesn't have to be just from work. You can find that in other areas.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Bargov, that I would kind of come alongside Nick and agree with. Another thing that you're talking about is going through the situation with abortion. So this is a really complicated issue, at least here in America. It's something that's constantly being debated, and a lot of people have different political views about it. But one thing I've always thought was sort of lost in the conversation is, as our political sides debate over whether or not this should be something people are allowed to do, we sometimes forget to discuss that it's a very personal, very intimate, very emotional choice, and it has a lasting effect on a person. And so what's interesting about this story, Nick, is he's talking about how his wife went through this. She made this choice. At the time, they were in agreement about it, but there's sort of this remorse, and it's this lingering effect where for both of them, they're a little shaken up from it, and that sounds a lot like trauma to me. When I hear that, I think, wow, that kind of emotional echo that's happening in them. There's now this question of like, well, do we want to start a family? Our lives are not quite, on a foundation yet where we know where we live. And, when we think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, having that base level of, I know where I am, I feel safe, that's imperative for a human to really create a life around. They don't have that kind of firmament yet. And then there's that lingering effect of, oh my gosh, did we pass on an opportunity to build a family too soon? Should we have gone ahead and done that? So there's a lot of factors at play, I think, emotionally.
Right. Well, and then you find yourself getting stuck in the past.
Yes.
Right? And dwelling so much on, what should I have done? Was that the right move? Was that the right decision? You can get stuck there forever, and you're never going to come to any solution.
Yeah. And, this, again, Bargov, I appreciate the complexity of this case, and I'm going to admit that it is. I mean, obviously there's the dynamic of distance. There's the dynamic where she's sending the signal of saying, I think I want to go ahead and start a family, I want to have children, and yet she's not making herself very available for sex. I'm sure you guys are already talking about it. You seem like a pretty articulate person. You seem like you're comfortable discussing it, but that's going to be the heart and soul of this, is at some point the two of you sitting down and hashing out why the inconsistency, why is this incongruent? Because you're saying one thing, you're calling for the creation of a family, but your actions aren't lining up as if that's what you want. What's behind this? And my guess, Nick, if I had to throw a dart at it, I think it's going to be some sense of insecurity. It's going to be a feeling of, our life isn't stable. I don't know my own destination. I don't know who and where I am in 1 year. It's hard to bring a child into that. I remember, when I was a new dad, I had been in my career for years. My wife and I had been married for 4 or 5 years when we had our first child, and it was still terrifying. There is no right time to have a kid, and everything comes together. And so I know for a lot of prospective parents, there can be this shakiness, this fearfulness of okay, is this irresponsible? Should we do this? We don't feel safe yet. And if I had to guess, I'd say that's probably a factor in her mind as well.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of insecurity, and I'll just throw in the most obvious thing, which I'm sure everybody's already thought of, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I think a big part of this just has to do with open communication.
Yeah,
if we're talking about her happiness, sometimes the best question to ask is, hey, what can I do? What would make you happy? How can I be supportive of that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And even though it's something really basic and really simple, it's one of the things that is most commonly looked over and not addressed.
And that's actually the big burden of distance relationships. They can work, and a lot of people say, no, they're impossible. No, it's not true. They absolutely can work. But communication is the heart and soul of it, and it comes down to feeling known by the other person. It's not just, we talk about life goals, and we talk about like where we want to be in 5 years and how we vote and, our favorite sports team. It comes down to this understanding where I feel that I am known by the other person, that my secrets are out to this other person, and my truth is understood and received. And so, another thing, Bhargav, that you say that I really want to zoom in on, at the end, Nikki says, listen, I've tried to bring her to therapy. I've brought this up. I've advocated for this. And she says no, and she doesn't just say no. She's refusing sternly. Obviously, when I see that kind of thing, I'm aware of that, right? I take notice of that. But here's a little trick that I'll pass to all the listeners. There's a lot of folks out there that believe that their family could benefit from couples therapy, from doing something in a group kind of setting. And they come to their spouse, they come to their mate, and they say, hey, can we go get some work on this? And a lot of times, the other person will say, absolutely not, for whatever reason. A lot of times they feel like they're going to get blamed for things. Like, a lot of people have a misperception that we as therapists are just going to be a referee and we're throwing flags and like, that person's to blame, he's a pathological liar, he's ill, or whatever. And then other times it's just, hey, I don't think it's helpful, or I have a stigma about it. A good trick to getting your spouse or your mate to go into therapy with you is to go into therapy for yourself. Start there. And then let them know what you're doing. Let them know, yeah, I've been working on this. I'm working on, and you can pick something general. I'm working on my life. I'm working on life coaching. I'm working on success. Or I'm working on making sure I'm comfortable with me or being the best version of me for you. And then what you do is you go to your spouse and you say, my therapist, and this is true, as therapists, we will back you up on this. We would like your spouse to come to therapy, not to talk about them, to talk about you. And that's the way I usually pitch it to the spouse who doesn't want to come, is I say, hey, can you come as an expert witness on Bhargav? Like, I want to get your perspective on him so that I can get a better case of who he is so that I can help him better. When you bring it to the spouse like that, 9 times out of 10 in my experience, they come because they're like, yeah, no, I can't wait to tell you everything that's wrong. Like, I have a whole list. Like, let me just get it all out. But when they come, they have that experience. They engage in a deeper conversation. Usually we can start up some topics that really are meaningful to the marriage. And in my experience, I'd say whenever I have somebody that I can kind of coax into coming, I'd say 70, 80% of the time, if I invite them back regularly, they'll come. And usually they'll say, well, I'll come every other week. And, 1 week you go with Bhargav, the next week we'll come as a couple, and, I'll assist in your work. And that's it. I just tell them, yeah, you're just my assistant. Help me with this. Help me fix your husband. But over time, you can kind of grow together. So Bhargav, maybe consider that for yourself. Get involved for yourself, and then see if you can patch her in. And even if she is in another country, because that was a little unclear in the letter, you can always Skype. You can always, a lot of therapists will do that, online, by phone, patch you in. It's not a problem.
Right.
Can
Very good.
Can I throw in my uneducated
can.
thoughts?
Jump in, Smith.
I've been waiting for this.
One thing that struck me, and Bhargav didn't really mention it, but I was wondering if he's dealing with kind of a guilt himself.
Yeah.
That his wife can't work.
Right.
And so then he feels bad coming home and saying, I
got the
had a
winning
great,
ticket.
great day at work,
Yeah.
and I just killed it, or complaining, my boss is...
that's a good point.
Because either way...
Yeah.
That's
a really good point, because he said it's a lottery. And he said, well, I won.
Right.
She didn't.
It's almost kind of like a survivor's guilt type thing.
Yeah.
Where it's, you kind of have, you maybe he doesn't feel as open talking about his day or how things are going, because it's like, well, I don't want to portray that I'm like showing off, or that I'm so much more successful, or whatever.
There's a resentment.
Or be ungrateful because he's complaining about a bad day at work and she can't work at all.
Wow. That is how it works in my house, except exactly in reverse. So here's how it works in my house. My wife's a teacher. She has summer off. I'm excited for her every day that she doesn't have to go into work. I'm like, what are you doing today? She's like, watching Netflix and hanging out with the kids. And I'm like, cool. I'm going to go work now. Have a great day. And then I work, and get home late. And I'm like, hey, how was it? She's like, it was awesome. But if I so much as have a day off or even a half day, dude, I am paying for that for like a month. She's so pissed. Like, she'll be like, so how was your day? I'm like, it was good. Like, what'd you do? I played video games. I'll bet you did, you lazy piece of shit. Like, it's so bad. So I think it's that in reverse for Bhargav. Like, he's actually working, enjoying himself, creating a culture, being a part of this. He has an adventure, right? He has a story to tell. And she's still waiting, still waiting to launch. That's actually a really good insight. And that survivor's guilt, I think, is the right way to describe that. I wonder if that's part of it. But she won't open up about it.
Right.
And it would
You know,
seem it
someone
would
talk-
cut down communications. If he's not comfortable
Right.
discussing his
Yeah.
work life,
Yeah.
then there's a lot less they talk about.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point, because then he feels ashamed, or he feels like, well, this is a trigger, I can't bring it up. But whatever it is, man, it clearly, the communication seems to be the big missing ingredient, which is unfortunate because therapy is the way that we can rebridge that. One trick might be to go for yourself and then to try to patch her in sort of as an expert witness. But there's incongruence here, Bargov. I mean, that's the deal. She's saying she wants one thing. Her behavior lines up as if she wants another. You are a good person. I can sense that he loves and is selfless, and he wants to be kind to her. But Nick's advice is still prescient here. I don't want you over-focused on her to the point where we're not still attending to your needs.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for writing in. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will discuss anxiety and the imposter syndrome. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Smitty Scoop.
Hey, THERAPOD.
He's here in studio with us at the Churn, and if you'd like to join the party and help make the show possible and tap into the special content for patrons only, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is about work anxiety and imposter syndrome.
Hey guys, new listener and THERAPAL here. I just
Yeah.
want to say how much I've enjoyed the show. I'm pretty sure this isn't a topic you've covered yet, so I wanted to put it out there. I'm constantly struggling with the imposter syndrome and confidence at work. A little background. I was a kid with massive anxiety issues and some OCD tendencies. I was on anti-anxiety medications in high school because I would get myself so worked up about certain classes that I would make myself physically sick. However, I was always a great student, on the honor roll, high GPA, and in multiple honors classes. I think the combination of medication and maturing helped me to overcome a lot of anxiety. Fast forward, I'm now nearly 26 and in a well-paying career in marketing/communications. I've been in my current job for a year, and I just don't love it. There is no passion or creativity in what I do, and it's taking my motivation. On top of all that, I'm constantly in fear that I'm doing something wrong, going to miss a deadline, or screw something up. It's a totally different type of marketing than I'm used to. I've been keeping myself up at night with anxiety and basically dreading going to work the next day. I'm struggling with the team I work with, as they are a bunch of hot-headed and stubborn men that can often be hard to work with. Don't I know it? I finally got myself to the point of thinking, it's just a job. It's not my job, and it's not my job, and I can't let this affect my mental health. But I'm still getting that imposter syndrome creeping back into my mind. I feel like a fraud. I feel like I don't deserve where I'm at, and I'm eventually going to let this job that I don't even love own me. Pretty sure I'm already there. Or find something that pays way less but is more emotionally stable. I keep getting the message that it's just my first year anxiety while learning a new job, but I can't stand this feeling of not being perfect at what I do. On top of that, I was just given a promotion, so I feel undeserving and keep wondering when my bosses are going to find out that I'm not as awesome as they think. I've been contemplating seeing our employee assistance program therapist for some additional insight, but I don't want to get back on anti-anxiety medications. I feel so lost. Help. Scoop Shea.
This is a great question.
Yeah.
I resonate with every single word of this
Oh,
question.
absolutely.
It's a great question. The only thing I don't like about this is that Scoop Shea and I have an ongoing beef that's happening on Twitter.
Oh, is this Utah?
This is Utah. Yeah, this is Utah. So she's on notice, and I'm going to put aside, okay, as I'm going to be the bigger man, and I'm going to put aside all the beef so that we can go ahead and help. But no, I completely resonate with this. So a couple of notes here. First off, the way that she describes imposter syndrome, and we've talked about this before on the show, but it's that feeling of fish out of water, like this feeling of, oh my gosh, the world's going to find out I'm a fraud. And for a lot of people, Nick, you can experience this anywhere. You can experience this at any level of your life, at any age of your life. I'm not surprised that she's 26. She's into her career now for the first time, and she's way successful, right? And so she's moving quicker than she thinks she should, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is all a lie. And the way that I think about that is when I was learning to drive. I remember this. You first get on the freeway. Remember this? And how terrifying that is for the very first time because you've never driven past like 35 miles per hour. And you get on the freeway and you start going and you just white knuckle that wheel and you're just like, oh my God, I should not be here. I'm going to crash into somebody. And you're going straight. Like you're doing it right. Mm-hmm. And whoever's teaching you is reminding you, hey, you're fine. You're doing exactly what the rest of us are doing. And there's that feeling when you first get on the freeway, everybody here knows that I'm new. Everybody here knows I don't belong. And we all have that feeling. You know, when we join a sports team, when we start a new job, there's that fish out of water, imposter kind of mentality. And Scoop Shay, you know, I want to come alongside that point you made earlier. One of the first things that you said here is, I keep being reminded by others that I'm still in the first phase of my career. And so it's okay, you know, to feel this way. I agree with that. And I do want to kind of come alongside and normalize what you're experiencing because that feeling is not a fact. Clearly, the evidence of whether or not you are qualified, the evidence says that you are. You're getting promoted. You've been accepted into the profession. You're doing very well. You're being financially compensated for what you do. The feeling is, it's all a lie. I don't deserve this. The fact is, the people whose professional job it is to figure out who's competent to do this, they support you. And they like what you're doing. And so I just want to broaden that perspective first to just separate feelings from facts, because that's one of the most important things that we can do with imposter syndrome.
Which sounds weird coming from a therapist, but I agree.
Right.
Sometimes we put way too much emphasis on feelings.
Yes.
And we're not looking at what the evidence is.
Right.
Right. And I completely agree with, you know, the feelings of the imposter syndrome. I still feel this to this day.
Yeah.
I've been doing this. I've been in my line of work for 16 years now, and I still feel this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's okay. And I know that this isn't really what you want to hear, because one of the things that you said is that, what if my supervisors find out I'm an imposter? I'm paraphrasing that, but that's essentially
what if I'm discovered?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of shatter that for a second and just say, they already know.
Right. They know exactly what you can do. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I had to really come to terms with, too, early on in my career. My supervisor really liked me, but I discovered that she didn't hire me into the position because of the skills that I already had. She hired me because of the potential she saw in me.
Right.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And one of the things, too, that I think is really important, you know, being able to give yourself a break and realizing that within your first year, that's not the expectation that you're going to know everything and that you're going to have everything down. That doesn't exist. There's this philosopher, Martin Heidegger, who was from Heidegger from Germany.
Yeah,
right?
they're all from Germany. Yeah,
all philosophers.
And if not, they have to move there. It's the rule.
So, did you ever hear his example about the hammer?
Okay, I think so.
Okay, so basically, he was talking about how you can look at the hammer, you can study the hammer, and to use 21st century analogies, you can read about it, you can watch a YouTube video on a hammer, you can know everything there is to know about a hammer, but the first time you use it, you're going to bend some nails.
Right.
You're going to miss-hit. You're going to smack your thumbs. Right. It doesn't matter how much you know. There's that practical experience that you have to handle it. You have to know its weight, and you can't do that until you get in there and you start actively doing it. And for the first year, you're saying that you're making mistakes? Yeah, of course. You're in your first year. You're smacking your thumbs. And this is one thing that I hear a lot from younger people especially. Just out of school, getting into their career, and they start their job, and then they realize, I hear this all the time, they say stuff like, this isn't what I thought it'd be. Right. This isn't as rewarding as I thought it'd be. Yes. I don't feel any fulfillment. Right. But that's my response to that is, of course you don't, because you're smacking your thumbs. You're learning from the pain of screwing stuff up. I agree with that. And I think that's normal. I don't think you get that fulfillment until later on in your career. Yeah, and that fulfillment word is important too, right? Because the first, one of the themes in her letter is this work imposter syndrome. Do I fit in? Do I really belong here? Am I competent to do this? Okay, fine. And we've kind of spoken to that. But the other thing she talks about is the passion. She says, I have anxiety. That's another thing we should talk about. But she says, listen, I'm in a well-paying career. I'm doing really well at it. But there's no passion. There's no creativity. And I feel like my motivation is starting to lapse, right? And Nick, also that doesn't surprise me. And it's ironic because it goes back to what it means to start a profession. When you're in, so to speak, the academy, or you're in your preparation phase of whatever it is,
you're learning about the concept of what this job is, right? And you are excited about it. You've never gotten to do it. You idealize it. You fictionalize it. You fantasize about it. You if there were trading cards for people in your profession, you'd probably have them. I remember I had like a coffee mug that had all the best psychologists on it. And do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, do you remember my coffee mug?
I do remember
We had a shared
mug.
office once, and I had that mug, and I was really proud of it. But like, I was such a nerd for psychology. But then whenever you get into it, the shine comes off of any profession. The shine comes off. If there's I've quoted this before, but I'm writing that book for my kids, Love Dad, and there's a bit in there where I talk about work, and I point out to my kids, like, if work was fun, they wouldn't have to pay you to be there. Like, there's a reason you're getting paid. Like, it's because it's not self-awesome. Like, you don't have to go. And so, like, that's the thing, Shay, that I'd come alongside and want to continue to just kind of get you to see is, yes, the luster comes off. Yes, you can feel that lack of motivation. Yes, you can feel that lack of creativity. If that persists for a long period of time and it starts to cause a clinically significant amount of distress, it's bleeding into other areas of your life, it's sapping your joy and your enthusiasm, then I'm, as a therapist, getting more interested in this. And that's when I'm starting to think, okay, is it time for a career change? But it's still so early, and we're still gathering data. And it sounds like you've worked in one work environment of your industry, or maybe only a couple. And that's the thing, too. Nick and I have been therapists for a long time. We've worked at lots of places. Mm-hmm. Some of them are good. Some of them are not. There's so many variables that can factor into your passion, your motivation, your enjoyment of your profession, and tapping into that creativity as well. I just want to encourage her, I guess. I don't want her to see this as, okay, so this is a never-ending pattern of how it will always be forever. No, this is a snapshot. It is one point of data on the graph,
right?
And let's get some more data. Every day is another point of data, and I'll bet you have good days and bad days. So I would want to kind of encourage her to broaden that view, because losing your passion and whenever your job starts to feel like a job, that's because it's a job. And I think don't be scared of that, right? It's not going to be the thing you do with all of your heart every single day.
So what kind of advice would you give her for maintaining motivation in a job that has kind of lost that shine?
Yeah, come back to your values. And so one of the things I like to have people do in therapy especially when working with young people that are kind of figuring out their life, is I have them do a values assessment. And so a values assessment is essentially whenever they try to figure out, what are the things that matter most in my life? And that could be anything. For some people, it's money. And that makes us sound, oh my God, like you're the villain in a Disney movie. That's not the case. Money matters. That's why we're all doing jobs, right? It's why we all work. And so it's okay for that to be a value, because maybe you'll do anything for a living as long as you have enough money to take good care of your family and to enjoy the things you do. For some people, a high value is recreation. I know for Shay, she enjoys hiking. She has beautiful pictures of Utah, man. She's out there living the dream, which is part of the beef that we have is I'm bitter, because like she lives in a beautiful place and like I have sand and snakes in my backyard. So, there's that. But, if that's a value for her, if recreation is a value for her, that may be one of the top things that's important in her life. I think you resonate with that.
Absolutely.
You changed your whole life and moved to a whole new place to better align with your values in life.
Yeah, definitely. I left the Midwest. I moved out here. I picked up new hobbies, mountain climbing.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of mountains in Iowa. So.
Not as many as you'd like.
not
some ant hills,
so,
pretty tall ones. Yeah,
it's tough to really sharpen your climbing skills.
Climb. But that's a good point, right? Because you looked at it and said, I could work anywhere, but I want to work there because one of the things that really matters to me is fitness and outdoor activity, and I want to be an active person. That's a high value for you. And so today, if a job you're working allows you to do that, that job is aligned with your really important value.
Right. I mean, a big part of how I would make a career change or career decision has to do with what would be going on outside of my career.
Yes.
If I got offered a really good job back in Iowa, I love Iowa. It's my home. But I don't think I could move back there.
Right.
Like, I've got too many other hobbies and interests that I just can't do in Iowa.
It wouldn't align.
Yeah, and so it wouldn't matter as far as the job. Everything in my life has to be balanced, and everything has to fulfill that need.
But that's the point, and that's the thing I want Shay to do, is align with her values. And so the first thing is to do a value discovery. Sit down and think to yourself, what are the things that most matter to me? Is it outdoor recreation? Is it tourism? Is it money for the sake of other purposes? Is it family? And I'll do whatever I have to do as long as I'm looking at my family and they're safe. Is it your art? Are you a creative artist? And you'll do whatever you have to do as long as you can fulfill this other purpose. Whatever it is. And for some people, it's work. For some people, the value that most shines in my life is meaningful work. And that's a conversation you and I have had a lot. You know, we've asked ourselves, what do we want from our job? And I one of your famous answers that I've always really liked, I think you said, I want to do meaningful work in a relevant way. And I think that was something that always stuck with me, because you were like, I'll do any kind of therapy with any kind of population as long as I feel like it's meaningful and I'm making a difference in these people's lives. I can walk away at the end of the day and feel fulfilled, even if it was hard.
Right.
And so that's the thing that I'd want Shay to kind of get in touch with. What are your values? And if what you're doing helps you get and execute those values, it is meaningful. And I want you to put that in context. But a lot of times we zoom so close into the day-to-day life of the job, and it's such a big part of our time real estate. It's 8 hours or more a day. It's 40 hours a week. It's the people and place that we're at, that it can become the only thing in our life that we notice.
Right.
And I want to make sure it's not.
The last thing that I want to point out, too, for Shay is allow yourself the dignity of making mistakes.
Yes.
Because this is one thing that I think is a big difference between children and adults, is children can have a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyment doing stuff they've never done before.
Right.
Because they don't have the concept of, I did it wrong, I made a mistake, I'm not doing this right.
Right.
They try it, it didn't work, they try something else, and they just move on. Whereas adults, I think we get stuck in this way of thinking where I have to be perfect.
Right.
I can't make a mistake. I'm hired to do this job, I got to do it well.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to get out of that mindset.
Yes.
Every mistake you make, you get closer towards being the better professional.
I like that. And, last point on this as well, when we're young, there's an adventure component to everything we do. Everything we do is the first time we're doing it, or one of the first times we're doing it. Once you start getting good at your career, it becomes routine, it becomes boring a little bit if you're good at it. And there can be a loss of passion that's there. And I don't mean this in a condescending way, Shay, but that's part of growing up. And that's okay. And I don't want you to run from that feeling. I want you to measure and sort of accept that feeling. That doesn't mean that you lose the spark of life. It just means this is not an area where a lot of spark's going to come from. It's time to diversify and have new adventures. And, the last thought I'll add to it is that she's afraid to go to see her employee assistance program counselor because she's afraid of getting on anti-anxiety meds.
Oh, I was going to address that too.
Yeah, go ahead, because that's important.
Just say no.
Yeah, just say
Nancy
no.
Reagan was right. Just say no.
Just say no.
No one can put you on anti-anxiety meds against your will.
That's not a thing.
Yeah,
we can offer them to you, or we can say, hey, let's get you in touch with a doc who will write a script for it. And you can even fill that script and then put them in your medicine cabinet, because nobody will know whether you're taking them. And if they're not working for you or they're not something you need, decline. Yeah. That's okay.
Yep.
Can I share a thought?
Yeah, jump in, Smitty.
Can.
One of the best career advice I got was that when you're in your job, look around and see if there's anyone that has a job that you do want, that you're happy with, and then realize that these are the dues I have to pay and what is the path to get to the job that I want.
Set that goal.
And if there's no one that has a job that you want, that's when you look to go somewhere else.
Go somewhere where there's somebody you admire.
But normally when you get hired at
Well
26, you're not in your dream job.
That's
But
right.
you should see the path to get you where you want to go.
I love that.
That's a good point,
That's
too.
a
And
really good point.
that actually reminds me, so one of the books that I was reading, I actually tweeted a picture of it.
Oh, it's the one about the
Resilience.
Navy SEAL or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's Eric Greitens, I know I'm mispronouncing the name, but
That sounds right.
Yeah, he was a Navy SEAL. He got his PhD at Oxford.
That's
for
right, this guy.
philosophy.
Yeah.
So one of the things that he talks about in that book is the importance of having a model, having somebody that you can look towards, and kind of like a mentor. And it's kind of what I'm hearing you say, Smitty, too, is like having somebody at that agency, somebody or at your job that you can kind of admire and see how they do things.
Yeah,
So
I
that's a
really
good
like
point.
that a lot. And, that's actually my favorite interview question, whenever the interviewer says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I like it whenever you point at them without smiling and say, I want your job. That's the best way to do it. Also, I've never gotten hired when I do that. But.
And I can also relate to her frustration. It's been my experience that the people who are most confident at work are generally the least competent.
Yes. Yeah. We talked about that. Yeah.
The most competent people look at it like, well, that's true, but there are a couple nuances. There's it's not black and white.
Right.
The people who know the least are like, oh yeah, we could just replace that heart valve and you're as good as good.
Oh yeah, you'll be completely fine. And this goes back to something that Nick said about what her supervisors probably see in her. And I love that. I've been a supervisor. I've had teams of people that work under me, and I do not trust the ones who seem like they have it all together and have no fear whatsoever. I trust the ones who show me some form of trepidation because it means they take this seriously. They don't want to screw it up. They want to get it right. That's the team member I like.
I've heard the best job interview question you should ask if you're looking to hire someone is, what did I have for lunch yesterday? Because you want the person who says, I don't know. Not the person who goes, well, you look like you're probably a tuna salad guy. So
make an assumption.
And then they feel compelled to make up a reason and give you an answer to a question that they've no reason for them to know.
That's a great test to find out if they're a BS artist. Or they just go, hey, I don't know. And what did you have for lunch? You know what? Right answer. Also, the correct answer was sushi, because we're going to have sushi. Actually, that's tomorrow, huh?
All right. Thanks a lot, Shay. We appreciate that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we hear from Theraproducer Smitty Scoop. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Hey, TheraPals, if you're listening to this on Thursday, then that means it's time for sushi, sake, and psychology at Goemon Sushi in Las Vegas. We'll see you there at 12:30 p.m., and we're super excited to get to know you. Also, if you'll be watching our live performance at ScoopFest 2018, we are performing Sunday, October 14th at 2:30 p.m. It would be a big help if you could bring a question, story about mental health, or situation we could comment on for the live show. So get your wheels turning, grab a mic at the live show, and let's hear from you. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you there.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and now the moment you've all been waiting for. It's Smitty Scoop time.
The Smitty. It's Smitty Scoop time. I feel like it's a beer commercial. I just want to hear. Is it Smitty time? Hell yeah, it's Smitty time. So we've got Smitty Scoop, one of our Theraproducers here in studio. You heard him at the beginning of the show, and he's chimed in on some of the questions. And Smitty has actually brought some notes and a situation or question that we can kind of comment on. So take it away, Smith.
Well, I apologize in advance if it's getting a little serious.
Oh, okay. Getting real up in here.
And I'll put all the politics aside, but one of the recent events I've seen is, particularly on social media, on Twitter, I see lots of posts by friends, people I know, people I don't know that well, about their MeToo moments, why I didn't report. And I struggle with those situations. I feel like it's awkward. It's like if you told me, oh, my kid died last week. I don't know how to react. I don't do you want to talk about it? Do I not want to talk about it?
Right.
And so, a question I have is how do you know if someone wants to talk to it? What is the response? If you see someone, a week after they posted something about how they were sexually assaulted or raped, and do I just ignore it? Do I mention it? It's.
This is a good question.
I'm sorry for your loss seems kind of too pithy. I don't know what is the response.
How do you acknowledge it? Yeah, because they dropped a truth bomb. They didn't throw up there, hey, everybody, I had a great steak dinner at, this place, and you can follow up and go, how was that? I saw your picture. That looked like really delicious. They came out there and said, something devastating happened to me, and I feel the need to tell everybody about this because it's part of a national conversation about revealing the most intimate and scary truths that happen to us. And you're looking at them and going, I care for this person. You're my friend. I want to acknowledge it. I want to let you know, hey, I saw that. I received it. I guess I'm here for you. But that tension of what do you do with that?
Well, and just in general, I think I'm kind of socially awkward, so I don't know what's the right situation.
Trick?
Oh, that's so terrible. Want a sake bomb? It doesn't seem like that's the way.
Can I buy you a beer? Just platonic.
I don't think that has anything to do with social awkwardness. I think
it's just a hard one.
I think that's just a tough one. And I think how you deal with it probably depends a lot on the setting too, because as you're talking about this, I'm imagining when I was new into doing counseling and therapy, my background is mostly in addictions treatment, but addictions treatment goes hand in hand with trauma.
Yeah.
So I have heard some terrible things that have happened, and people have opened up in a session with me about some terrible things that they've never told anybody about. And that was probably one of the biggest obstacles that I had in becoming a therapist is what do you do with that? When somebody says something, what do you do? And I think I've learned more of what not to do than I have of what to do.
Yes.
So there's a couple things that number one, I make a really strong effort to don't to not make it about myself,
Yeah.
to not try to relate,
Yeah, right.
not try to push people to talking about it if they don't want to.
Right.
I always start with, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Right.
And then I've also learned that silence can be golden.
Yes.
I usually start off with, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I allow the silence to kind of take over.
Yeah.
Because then that puts it back on them. And they
Yes.
can decide, do I want to talk about this more? Or did I say all I need to say and can I move on?
Yeah.
Because sometimes by me asking questions, then now I'm driving it.
It's you get in the driver's seat. So, to what Nick's describing is actually something we have to train on. And there's 2 techniques that we do, which he's describing what it is, but I'll actually give you the names of them. So the first one is offering silence. And that's something that as normal humans in normal interaction, we don't do very well. A lot of us don't even do silence very well. It's uncomfortable. We just feel unnerved or we feel like a jitter. When somebody's telling you something that's difficult or deeply true, it's meaningful to be with them, to be present physically in the room and just sort of like sense their presence in the room and offer your presence, but refraining from commentary, refraining from bumping the conversation forward, refraining from trying to make them feel better, which is a huge mistake a lot of people do. If you say, hey, I come from the Christian community, and this is something that is like horrible and always happens there, is somebody will say, hey, my aunt died of cancer this week. And instead of like, wow, that's awful, you must miss her a lot.
I know where you're going with this.
Hey, don't be sad. She's in heaven with the Lord.
It's God's plan.
It's God's plan. Thanks, Drake. And so like it gets really weird really fast. So when we do that, though, we're minimizing emotion. We're minimizing your truth. Or I'm passively teaching you that I'm uncomfortable with your truth, and so I need you to get this away from me. And so what Nick's talking about is offering silence when we kind of absorb that truth. And the first thing we do is reflect. And so when we reflect, it's what Nick started with. Wow, that must be awful. That's horrible. We just call it what it is. It's kind of like standing next to the other person and just describing what you both see. They say, oh my gosh, did you see that car hit the other car? And you look at it and go, yeah, that car hit the other car. That was loud. That was sharp. That was startling. And you just kind of acknowledge what it is. Now, what's interesting about in Smitty's question is we're kind of specifically facing the reality that these things get said online. And the unique dynamic of talking online is that you're kind of not talking to me unless it's a direct message. You're kind of just saying it out loud, and you're fully aware that I can see that, and that presents a whole unusual dynamic. Because that if I do see you in person, what do I do?
Right. I mean, your description of how you respond seemed to be more a
In the
professional interaction.
Right.
How about a social interaction? You're at lunch or having a bar, and someone's like,
Right.
my stepfather raped me. Like,
Wow.
how do you...
Yeah, what do you do
Well,
with that?
I'll be honest with you. My personal response to
It's the
that
same.
is not much different
Yeah,
than
no,
my
that's actually the
therapeutic
way
response.
I would do it too.
Because the most that I would ever talk about or turn it on to me, because again, I don't want to talk about me in that situation, but the most that I would ever turn it on to me would be to explain, man, you're a good friend of mine. To hear that this happened to you,
Hurts.
that hurts.
Yeah.
How are you doing with that?
Right. That's
You know?
authentic. And so, ironically, you're right. What we're describing came from the academy, but that is still the way we would interact with somebody because it meets the need of the moment. There's no fixing them, right, in that strategy. It's just a way to authentically approach them, being mindful of all the ways I could do this wrong, and sort of taking the path that gives them the most freedom to continue the conversation. By minimizing my role, receiving their truth, and just sort of reflecting it back to them, hey, that's awful. Hey, I saw you posted this. Man, that was, or, let's say that. Like, hey, I just want to bring up, I saw the other day on Twitter that you posted this. That looked really terrible. And I know there's been a lot of people that resonate with what you're going through. I just wanted to let you know. I saw that and I thought that's really hard. And I'm here for you as your friend. So I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. And you can leave it right there, and then they may chime in with more.
Right. And I think it's been my experience that most of the time when people are bringing stuff like that up, what they're really looking for is they're looking for some kind of validation
Yeah.
for how they feel and how they're reacting to it. You know, in a sense, I'm trying to think of an example, but this thing happened to me. This is what I'm doing. My concern is, am I handling this appropriately?
Right.
Am I in the right spot mentally? Is this okay?
Right.
And sometimes to be able to hear somebody else say, "Wow, yeah, if I were in your position, I'd be having a tough time with that too."
Right.
It kind of gives that validation of, you have every right to feel the way that you do about this situation. And then the next thing, I think sometimes one of the best things that you can do is just be able to say, "Hey, what can I do for you?
Right.
How can I help?
I'm here. I'm here if you need anything."
What do you need me to do?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's. I see the theory of that. I would be a little less direct in my delivery of it, right?
Well, yeah. I wouldn't
Hi,
say
what can
so.
I do for you today? Can I carry that water? I guess it's not going to make up for the bad thing that happened. I know, but I'm just going to clean your car. No, but I like that sense of presence, right? That sense of acknowledgement without trying to fix them, without trying to dismiss them, without trying to minimize it. These are all the principles I'd want a person to approach that with. And then I think that last part is a really good component of the conversation of, hey, you know, I'm here if you want to talk about it. I'm really sorry to see that this happened. And I think that's the best we can do. Acknowledging it, I think, is the right thing. Or if you don't feel like there's a sense to bring it up, I think you can ignore it. But one of the challenges I've seen on social media is I've had people post something like that, and I want to click like to acknowledge that I saw it.
Right.
What's the appropriate emoji?
There needs to be an
there's-
unlike. There needs to be like a button that's like acknowledge.
Well, there's like
I
the
see
sad
this.
face now.
Like
or
an
the
empathy
crying.
or something. Like,
No, but I use Twitter. And so like it's like heart or like, and I'm like, but I don't like this.
I don't want to retweet this.
I
It's
don't
just
want
not
to
a-
retweet this, but I agree.
And
or
that's
like I don't know what to do.
when we're talking about the social media thing, that throws a whole different wrench
Yeah,
into the
that's a different
system.
animal.
And I don't know as if there is. I don't know if there is like a right way to deal with that.
Right.
I typically don't respond at all.
Yeah.
And if I respond at all, it's usually in a direct message. You know,
Right.
and
Hey,
where
I
I
saw
say,
this.
"Hey, you know, this. I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry that this happened to you." And in which case, I'm usually just writing down what I would have said in person.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. And,
No
you know,
problem.
you don't have to fly all the way to Las Vegas to ask it. You can just email us. But, you know,
Next time I'll do that.
God, it was a long flight, guys. I'm not sure the answer was that satisfying. But thanks for coming out, Smitty. We're so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for helping produce the show. And thank you for your commitment to mental health.
It was great. Thanks, guys.
And happy Scoop Fest.
Absolutely.
If you would like to meet Smitty, join us for sushi, sake, and psychology. Right? You're coming, right?
Oh, absolutely. Tomorrow.
Are you a spicy sushi guy or what?
I am.
Are
I
you
like
really?
everything except I can't stand cucumbers.
Oh,
it
yeah?
drives me
Oh,
nuts
really?
when they like
Okay.
stick cucumbers in the spicy tuna or whatever. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
like,
I'm a real pansy. I can't do anything spicy. Nick likes baked rolls, but, you know, I'm trying to teach him. I taught Nick how to sushi, so I'm kind of his guru. And so I'm constantly having to correct him, like, hey, you order those at the beginning of sushi. Like, those are not for
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
I do like the Japanese lasagna one. where
Yeah, that's
they
the one.
my favorite.
That's
boil it
Nick's
with the
favorite
cheese.
one.
Yep.
Yeah, but one time we were at the end of sushi, and Nick decided this is a great time to get the one that was called, like, built of Spam. It was like the Hawaiian roll, and it was built of Spam and just every nasty thing. I was like, why are you doing this? And I had to back him up, and it was very bad.
It's the hot dog of sushi rolls.
Yeah, it was a bad decision. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. Thank you to our new landlords, Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thank you to those who contributed to our show today, especially Smitty Scoop, who showed up in person. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and now on patreon.com/therapy.
If you want to add your own advice to today's questions, post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman,
I'm Smitty Scoop.
Yeah!
and that's Jim Jobin. Thank you, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.